Hi, welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, I'm an arts programmer and cultural critic based in Toronto, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Jason Buxton, a writer and director whose first film, Blackbird, cast Connor Jessup as a withdrawn teen who finds himself doing time in the youth detention system. His new drama, Sharp Corner, stars Ben Foster and Kobe Smulders as Josh and Rachel, suburban parents who discover their gorgeous new home is a magnet for car crashes. As Josh becomes obsessed with preparing for the next accident, a whole other level of tension is introduced into their marriage. I presented the world premiere of Sharp Corner last year at TIFF, and I'm elated to see it opening in theaters across the US and Canada this Friday, May 9th. You kinda need to be trapped in the dark with it. Jason picked The Ice Storm, Ang Lee and James Schamus's 1997 adaptation of Rick Moody's semi-autobiographical look back at Thanksgiving 1973. When America was still reeling from the convulsions of the 60s, Richard Nixon was still trying to hold on to office, and the sexual revolution was just reaching New Canaan, Connecticut. Starring Kevin Kline and Joan Allen as the Hoods, and Jamie Sheridan and Sigourney Weaver as the Carvers, with Tobey Maguire, Christina Ricci, Elijah Wood, and Adam Han-Bird as their kids, the film paints a chilly but fully felt portrait of two families on the verge of a collective awakening, and what that catharsis might cost them. You may not have seen it in a while, but it's a modern classic, and Jason's here to talk about why that is. This is Someone Else's Movie.
Well, it was a film that I saw in the theater when it came out in 97, and it moved me. And I think it's a film that it's a brilliant film where all the pieces are working together in tandem. And I think that's a real testament to Ang Lee as a director, that in a way, the film, there's nothing spectacular. It's a very understated, low-key drama in many ways, but the emotional impact is so severe. I really wanted to sort of look at what is it that makes this film so powerful, and I think it's his ability to calibrate everything, the performances, and the production design, the cinematography, just everything is working together to just create this very powerful emotional experience, yet it's not sentimental, which I think is, to me, the key to why I like that film.
I'm fascinated by Lee's career in the large because he's gotten distracted by digitalia, CG, high frame rate, all these things that take away from the thing he does in The Ice Storm, which is just force you to feel by showing you people. There is a level of artifice at work. I don't know if you know this, but it's fascinating to me. The ice is all plastic. There was no ice. They shot during an ice storm for one day, but it snowed as well, and so they couldn't use it. They had to digitally remove the snow from 5 or 6 shots that remain in the film of that day. Everything else is the sort of plastic surface and gel to simulate ice, but it looks so real that I never questioned it until I learned this and thought, oh, well, now I need to watch it again, because not only am I watching the authenticity of this performance happening in complete artifice, but I'm also watching an actor struggle with the unreality of it, and the idea that it all comes through as a single tonal work, the interplay of the performances and the restraint of the score, and even the cinematography is muted in a very specific and beautiful way. But it does feel like we are trapped with these characters in their spaces for way too long for comfort, and watching them sort of crack under this pressure. I don't know that he's ever surpassed it, honestly.
Yeah, that's my feeling too. I mean, I did like Brokeback Mountain, but not as big of a fan of some of his later efforts. I loved the book Life of Pi, highly successful Ang Lee film. But this one, to me, there's a beauty in the simplicity of it. And I did know that, actually. I had read about them creating this type of gel that they would use for ice, and the containment of the world. And it's also very economic in terms of telling a story about so many different characters and it not feeling highly expositional, but we're thrust into their worlds. Uh, and before, I would say about 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, we know all of the characters. And I think, and I was looking at it again last night, and the way that it's constructed, the way that it's edited is also very masterful as well. Uh, just very efficient, masterful. And I'm not a sentimental person, and I've seen this movie 5 times, and I don't know if we can spoil movies on this podcast.
I mean, it's almost 30 years old. I think you can.
Yeah, okay. I found it devastating, and I found myself in tears. Surprisingly impacted by a movie that I know how it ends. And there's this one look between Kevin Kline and Jamie Sheridan when Jamie's picking up his son, and Kevin Kline's helping him and wants to have that shared moment. And there's this look on Jamie Sheridan's face where it's like, no, this is my moment. Back off. And Kevin Kline, it's just the way they cut the movie, the scene together, where you just feel it. And it's very quick and very subtle, and it's so much emotion in these sort of key moments. And it's just, yeah, very remarkable piece. Very sensitive, observational piece. And these unusual juxtapositions between Joan Allen and Christina Ricci, mother and daughter, and also the juxtaposition between Kevin Kline and Tobey Maguire, the dad and son, that are sort of happening, not unbeknownst to the characters. Joan Allen desires to be young again, and she gets on her bike and ends up stealing from the pharmacy, just like her daughter did. And then there's the curiosity with the medicine in the medicine cabinet between Kevin Kline and Tobey Maguire. So it's just there's so much to take from, I would say, each viewing for me. And yeah, for this is also one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this film, is because these are the kinds of films that aren't made anymore. Sadly, anything that deals with true character and emotional, just that degree of sensitivity that's given to motion picture, this is all sort of moved to TV, and then the narratives are slowed down because they have to take place over many episodes. But just the density and the texture of movies like this, I just don't see anymore, and I miss that. I long for that.
Yeah, I live in terror that someone will commission a 10-part Ice Storm adaptation where each character gets their own episode, because now after the White Lotus and things like that, people will think this is how you tackle the material. But the intercutting, the interplay, it's essential. I mean, it wasn't even the way the book was structured. I read the book after I saw the film and was really surprised to find out that they were all broken up by viewpoints in big chunks and eventually knitted together by the revelation of like who the narrator is. But it's gone here. It's not important. It's more important to represent everyone equally. Even Allison Janney's character has that one moment of, really enjoying being in the 70s.
Oh, yes.
The sense that you're watching someone catching up to, well, I mean, all of them are behind the times in terms of where they are in terms of liberation, because Joan Allen character is only just realizing she can have her own opinions. She's already having an affair, but that doesn't count because it's secret. Like, she's just now learning that women can be people as well. You have whatever's going on with Janie, with Sigourney Weaver's character, where she's just plunged into this depression and trying her best still to be a good parent, which I find really fascinating. That one scene where she grabs Wendy and says, "You have agency," and even as she's saying it, what's the line? She doesn't use their or her. The body is his. She uses the male pronoun because that's 1973, and she still can't conceive of using herself as an example in discussing like body urges and puberty.
Sigourney Weaver is brilliant.
She's incredible.
Yeah, in the whole movie, but in that particular scene, because she conveys somebody that, like, she's trying to come up with the adult thing to say, and she's just improvising, and she doesn't even fully believe in the words that are coming out of her mouth.
Yeah, she's just trying to keep her listening until she can get there, which is such a hard thing to convey, to telegraph as an actor, because we We are aware, and that's the thing that happens with everyone except Ben, except for Kevin Kline. And I'm sure it's deliberate, right? Because Kline is supposed to be playing the loathsome, irredeemable character who deserves everything that's coming. But everyone else, all the other actors get to show us when someone is thinking. Like Lee loves that stuff, to just hold the camera on somebody for an extra 10 seconds so you can see the movements of their eyes and the set of their shoulders and what they're about to do. And Ben just doesn't have that moment. He's it's like he's turned off if he stops moving. And that emptiness that Kline occupies in there is so, like, it becomes its own gravity, I guess, because especially on repeat viewings, we know that it's going to pay off, that there is something coming. But the first time through, I just kept thinking, he's going to kill his whole family. This, like, he's just going to drive the car into a telephone pole or something. He has nothing in him,
Yeah.
but there is so much that he's repressing.
Yeah, and he has that moment at the end. There's that one emotional release at the end. Um, but yeah, and I heard Ang Lee in an interview talk about this is, unlike his previous films, this is about bad people trying to be good.
Yep.
And I love that. And Kevin Kline, it's a tough character to like, but he's so likable because it's Kevin Kline, and he just sort of brings a humanity to this character. And I think we need to talk about, just briefly talk about the adaptation, I think, because
Sure.
it won Best Screenplay at Cannes. James Seamus, brilliant adaptation. And then whereas the producers had, and which is great because then Ang Lee's going to fight for certain things that James wrote, and maybe is like, as a producer, is like, no, we can't include that. We're going to cut that. So that would be an interesting dynamic, I'm sure.
Their relationship is really fascinating because, yeah, if you're a producer first and then you become the screenwriter of the film you're producing for a director you've worked with before, that is a really tangled and interesting relationship. I wonder how often. I mean, obviously they keep working together, so they've learned to do the give and take. But I wonder what had to be fought for on this film and was, like, judged as too important to cut. I know
Yeah,
they cut it 18 different ways. There were 18 versions of the film before they decided on, I guess 17 before they decided on the one that was released.
that's remarkable. And as I mentioned previously, it's just I guess that degree of rigor shows
I think so.
when I think about it, because where they landed and how it's put together is yeah, I mean, to tell an emotional story in a very, to me, very unsentimental way is I mean, that, and and also there's a deadpan humor that I just love, and that's perhaps where this film is sort of in my wheelhouse in terms of the kind of stuff that I like. It's like these little sort of moments, like Tobey Maguire trying to um chat it talk to
The
Katie
idiot
Holmes in
speech.
the hallway. Yeah, the idiot.
Yeah.
It's so brilliant. The idiot.
Yeah.
And so many sort of little moments, like comedic moments that feel real, maybe a little bit heightened, but they're deadpan, and they coexist with the sort of sense of impending doom that's going on, that is in the score, it's in the soundscape, it's in the performances. And this sort of sense for me, because I always try to figure out what is it that on a deeper level, this connection between nature and the dysfunctions of these people and the dysfunctions of these families. And it's, coming out of what's interesting, 1973, and coming out of the late 60s, and then sexual liberation sort of move into the suburbs, and being adopted by people who have sort of the generation between that generation and their kids, um, and their sort of disconnection and alienation from themselves and also from their children. I think all of that is really uh, there's like the texture to the world and the sense with the Native American instrumentation. There's also a sense of gamelan music that's also in Michael Dana's score that I think is speaking to something about you're disrupting nature. You're disrupting the nature of connection and loved ones, and there's consequences for that. I think that's what's so brilliant for me about that movie, and it's hard to even articulate. And I think that's a testament to the sophistication, the complexity of what they're doing with this film.
Well, the thing that you were just saying about the sense of nature versus the presumably civilized white people, which like Christina Ricci's character Wendy gets to call it out at Thanksgiving, like thank you God for letting us white people, I think is exactly what she phrases it, kill all the Indians, and gets shouted down because nobody wants to hear it. Uh, there's there's a sense that, and I do, like, some part of my brain is still trying to protect the ending, but there is a sense that that death at the end is a willing sacrifice, sort of, kind of, like the town or the world demands it. It lines up with Paul's speech about being able to leave a door open to the next world and just go there if you want to. Um, and even though when it happens, Mikey does say, like, he quickly says, "Oh no," he's got this little moment of awareness before it happens. The the vibe I got this time, weirdly enough, was if Shirley Jackson wrote a Mad Men episode. That's incredibly reductive, and I don't mean it to sound that way, but it captures the thing that Matt Weiner tries to do in Mad Men, which is point backwards and say, look how bad things were. And everybody thinks they're the most advanced, but they're just a bunch of idiots, horny idiots usually. And Shirley Jackson's whole concept of bad places, or places that demand that you acknowledge that you don't belong there through some sort of sacrifice.
Hmm.
And I kept thinking about it. And the other thing I realized this time is that, John Harkness used to say he would watch the rules of the game every few years and always identify with a different character, because the movie's exactly the same, but now the film was a rich enough text that he had changed and he would connect to someone else. I do think I received the film a lot more powerfully now because I'm 30 years older. When I saw it, I was younger and stupider and hadn't really experienced anything yet. And the sense that as you age, I mean, I don't have kids myself, but I've seen what happens when people have them, and friends of mine have them. And I know how you change in relationship to the fact that you're now a parent. And that's something that just never played for me before. But watching Weaver navigate that scene, or watching, Jamie Sheridan, who's totally underrated generally. And this might be his best work, because certainly he's given the big platter at the end of all this emotion to run through, but also that just that quiet disappointment that he carries for the first half, where he knows nothing's working. He knows the marriage might not be dead, but it's not doing well. And the refusal to acknowledge it, because this is what you do. It's 1973, and you go to work and you come home, and whatever's at home is what you have. There is a quiet dignity there to his sadness, as opposed to everybody else who's just fucking around all the time and refusing to accept who they are and who they're supposed to be. Here's a guy who is just trying his best to keep his family together, and this is what he has to deal with. It's a remarkably generous film in that way, because he could have just been a stooge, right? That character could just be off in the corner somewhere.
Yeah, and in the end sequence where, you really feel sorry for him
Mm-hmm.
because he knows that, I mean, before the finale, before the climax, where they're at the key party
Yeah.
and he's sitting there with Joan Allen, and you really feel a sense of he's just going through the motions. He's doing the things that he feels like he's supposed to do. And there's that, speaking of to come back to the humor of it, when he arrives home, and he says hi to his boys, and Elijah Wood's, character Mikey says, "You were gone." And he was on a trip to Houston on a work trip, and it just it's great humor, but it's also thematic because it speaks to just how disconnected all of these characters are. And I love what you had just said about this almost being like a sacrifice, because it you imagine what will happen after the movie ends in the worlds of these characters, and this obviously is going to wake them up, and it's the thing that maybe will reconnect them to themselves and their loved ones. I mean, the Hood family, the Kevin Kline and Joan Allen family, there's hope for that family. There's love there. They're not finding a way to communicate and be together fully, but you get a sense that they might find their way, that they'll find their path. And yeah, just truly and I've watched it. I watched it when it first came out, and I've watched it probably every decade and since, and it still holds up to me. I think this film might feel dated for a lot of people because, frankly, it's actually about something deeper than just about being a genre exercise. That it feels like nowadays we're more comfortable when the thematic material, is at a bit of a remove from day-to-day life, and so this movie, I guess, in that sense, is a bit old-fashioned, but yeah, there's so much there.
Hey, it's Norm interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. Last week, I wrote about Criterion's gorgeous new discs of Sean Baker's Anora and Julian Schnabel's Basquiat, and Warner's new 4K editions of the Clint Eastwood classics Dirty Harry, The Outlaw Josie Wales, and Pale Rider. Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io, or find a link at the Sendcast Blue Sky account. You like reading about movies? I like writing about them. Come check it out. Well, it's set in 1973, but it doesn't lean on it, at least not in the way that we assume a period piece should do that nowadays. Like there's almost no needle dropping. There's like an orchestral, the band plays There's Got to Be a Morning After from the Poseidon Adventure, which is really the only thing. That and Nixon are the two things that really date the film. It's the clothes are all kind of non-specific. I was surprised, or maybe they've just come back around again, because I was surprised how contemporary everybody looks now. The hair is the biggest giveaway. And
Yeah, and I also think the production design where there, there's a house that's from the 50s, and then there's the glass house that was very contemporary at the time, but you could see that in a film today. Obviously, we do see that architecture in a lot of films today. And then there's the colonial home, which is the home of debauchery and for the Key Party. And so, because it's mixing these different architectural styles with an understated costume design, although sometimes there's some flourishes there. Really great in terms of character. I mean, I think Sigourney Weaver's outfits and speak a lot about what's going on for her at this time in her life. But yeah, absolutely, it's period, but in a way it's not deliberate, or no, it is deliberate, but it's not drawing attention to itself in a way that a lot of period films feel, and therefore feel like artifice. This doesn't feel like artifice.
No, not at all. The something else occurred to me too is that it's 10 years after Kennedy's assassination, so this makes it a bookend to the explosions of the 60s. Like you get the sense that Nixon's fight to stay in power, which is what we're seeing at the time because he hasn't stepped down yet, is the last stand of the establishment against the forces of change. And then, you'll get Ford, then you'll get Carter, and then Reagan will get elected in 1980, and it'll all just stop, which is exactly what happened. But what we're seeing here is people who are catching up to a present that already isn't there anymore. The Key Party's only just made it to Connecticut, right? We are actually told this in a scene, like, oh, this is a thing they do in California, that it took this long to make it across the coasts, to the other coast. And none of that knowledge will save anyone, right? Like the only thing that matters in the film in the end is holding your family close. And they Lee, and I guess they both did, or whoever made the choice to take it out. In the Moody book, it ends with Tobey Maguire's character seeing the Fantastic Four signal, like a four burning in the sky, which is the payoff to him reading the comic book and realizing that his family, that's the four. Like, this is the only place he'll ever be safe and the only people he can ever really fully love or trust to love him back. And that's gone now. And we just have that quiet space in the car where they're protected from the rest of the world just by the doors being closed. And it ends on that beautiful shot of Maguire, who, I mean, incredibly expressive. He's like, his reaction shots are in pretty much every movie the most interesting thing. Like, this is right before Wonder Boys and Ride with the Devil, which he would make with Lee and Seamus right away. But Seamus, I keep doing that too. But we are hanging on this look, and it's not even, I mean, I can't articulate it. It's the moment should be Klein's, right? Like, the moment should be about him finally unable to stop the flood of emotion that's happening, but it's all about the reception of it. It's back on Maguire, and we are seeing a son see his father as he is for the first time in his life. And I've had that moment, and it's, how do you capture that? Like, people miss that all the time. It's the stuff of bad drama. But here it's just a cut and then a cut to black, and it's perfect.
Yeah, I noticed it last night when I rewatched the film, and what it felt like to me was the moment of innocence lost.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the only character who, I mean, we haven't seen the other members of his family tell him why they're upset, why he's crying, which is, you have to forgive it, in real life, that would be revealed before they get in the car, but it works. And I feel like he's been in New York that night, and he doesn't know anything that's happened. He's still sort of holding on to his innocence in a way, and then to cut to him after Kevin Kline's character breaks down, for that final moment, to me was like, oh, he sort of, he represents innocence, and this moment is innocence lost. That's how I interpreted
Yeah.
that end.
Yeah. And it also instantly explains why that character is the narrator for the film, right? Even though he's not there constantly, it's an in and out thing. But it was, I mean, in the book, that's the revelation that Moody is that character, that's him, that's his family. We are watching all of this through his eyes as an older person writing the story. But having Maguire narrate it as a young man just means it's happening, right? Like, there's no additional layering. But having it end on him, and that look of, like, it's almost wonder or bewilderment. It's not sadness. I keep thinking in my mind, like, every time I watch it, I remember it as it being a similar sad moment, but it isn't. He's awake.
Yeah.
And, for him, the ice storm was just sitting on a train in Grand Central Station, not able to go anywhere because the power was out. And this other thing happened completely outside of him. So, I think about something Stephen King said about writing Christine, which was a first person narrative. If you've read the book, it's broken into three distinct chunks. The first and third are narrated by the character who witnesses everything. And then the second chunk, because the character breaks his leg and goes to the hospital, it's third person, but King has talked about it and said he tried to do a Truman Capote and go back and just fudge it just enough that we still think that we're reading the hearsay as related by a character who missed it. And that explains the entire movie to me. Because if we are watching a memory of somebody who wasn't there, but pieced it together, it explains why everything is so distant and so muted, but still so close up, and why the actors seem to be fighting through this layer to have their characters register, because we're seeing it through the eyes, for the most part, of somebody who just wasn't mature enough to understand what happened the first time around. And it's the only thing I can think of, because otherwise it is just a conventional drama. And that's not a negative. It's an exquisitely made conventional drama. But there's something else inside of it that keeps bugging me, keeps pulling at me when I watch it.
Yeah. And the other aspect of it, in terms of where it's situated in time with Nixon and Watergate, and and how that generation, that period of time was all about deception and all about lies. And that's exactly what's going on with all of these characters. And I believe, I'm not 100% sure about this, but Christina Ricci deceives Mikey to visit Mikey's brother,
Yeah.
and then Mikey's out all night, ends up having that accident. One could argue in part because of this deception of Christina Ricci's character, and just all the characters are being deceptive in one way or another. Tobey Maguire is certainly being deceptive to Katie Holmes, and so that's sort of the common thread for me is these are all characters that are uh, seeking. It's like they're seeking desire, and they're trying to find a way to achieve this desire in the confines of this society. And the only way, at least they seem to believe that they can achieve their objectives, is through deception, to the detriment of true human connection.
Yeah, if any one of them had paid attention to Mikey, none of that would have happened. But they
Yeah.
were all off in their own, chasing their own things. And, so, and not necessarily, this is the thing, right? Because it's so human, they're not all bad desires. They're not all selfish. Some people are actually trying to connect with each other in these situations. But as a result, like the it's that executive ball toy where you pull the ball back and it just keeps
Yeah.
knocking back and forth. And
Right.
Mikey is just dropped out of that situation because he doesn't have that kind of relationship with anybody. And he doesn't have the luck in that one moment to not be there.
And yet he's the one who is fascinated with
Molecules,
physics and
interconnection.
molecules,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
interconnection of everything. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like there is a terrible version of this where he's the holy fool and it's so clear what's coming. And we've all seen movies where that character is around just to die, right? Like to be sacrificed by the screenwriter to the gods of drama. That's not what happens here. Like I do believe it's a sacrifice, but I don't think it's cynical or malevolent. I think it's what happens when you go missing. It's what happens when someone leaves the door open. And Mikey is just quietly off in his own world. He's capable of having conversations. He's funny. He's not, he doesn't sit in a corner and stare out the window. He is an active part of this family and these people's lives. But he's not what they want in that moment. Nobody wants to talk to him or hang out with him. And as a result, he's just gone.
Yeah, yeah, and that film had an impact on me the first time I saw it, and I was in my mid-20s at the time, and it got a shout out to the Oscars. I remember that year.
Completely, unbelievably so. Yeah, it was released right after TIFF, so late September, and it was just one of those situations where by the time the awards season started, I think because it wasn't a huge hit, it just faded out, which is absolutely unfair. I mean, just given how well Lee did with subsequent movies, it's clear people are aware of his talent and they know he's a serious artist. But yeah, to have all the actors overlooked just feels like a crime.
Yeah, I know. Even Sigourney Weaver, who I think won the BAFTA that year,
It sounds right.
was yeah, they were all not acknowledged at Oscar time. But it was the year of Titanic, so it was the year of the big Hollywood tentpole kind of film. So, but it got its due a little bit at Cannes with the Best Screenplay Award.
Yeah, and it picked up. I've got the list here. It picked up some prizes here and there, but when even the Golden Globes only goes for Sigourney Weaver and doesn't give it to her, that's just like, come on, guys, you're missing the point here. But but it does stand now as something, and clearly everybody was happy with it. That it was a film that achieves exactly what it wants to achieve. And I'm hoping for its 30th anniversary, there's some kind of 4K reissue from Criterion that puts it back in the spotlight. It's so precious and weird and delicate and hard. Like it's a it's not a cruel film, but it understands cruelty, the way people drift apart and stop caring for each other or stop caring about each other, and the way kids are hostages to their parents. That's a theme that you see fairly often nowadays. Like on shows like The White Lotus, basically just trade in it, but
Hmm.
it's all done for a broader satirical. I mean, no disrespect to the actors involved in The White Lotus, but like it just feels to me like Mike White doesn't really like his characters very much, and so it doesn't matter who ends up dead at the end. It's just whoever he wants to have a brief moment of sympathy for in the last episode. But this is a film that does that right. This is a film that
Yeah.
explores the interrelations of parents and children and friends, and understands the tensions and treats the audience with the respect that they'll get it too.
Yeah, the satire in this is very understated and plays second to the drama as opposed to White Lotus, which obviously is so much about the satire and the delight in taking characters to, those exaggerated lengths for sure. Yeah.
And that seems to be what people want from it. But yeah, give me this any day. Give me the mid-range, modestly budgeted, well acted, beautifully cast, everybody off the New York stage and onto the set for a couple of months kind of picture. No, this one feels more like a treasure than most. And weirdly enough, it does pivot me to Sharp Corner, which is also a slight remove in terms of the way it tells its story, and the isolation involved in suburbia. And there is, I did notice a road with a curve where things happen. Was that, I mean, was that part of it? I know that you said you started with the curve, with the idea of the road. Was it resonant with,
Well,
or did you find yourself having to go out of your way not to make it look like it does in the Ice Storm?
no, I mean, the Yellowstone wasn't a direct influence in that regard. I mean, Sharp Corner is based on a short story, and so it was always about this sharp turn by this couple's house. Um, but there's elements. I mean, obviously, Sharp Corner is a very different film, and but I do think there are some similarities, and I think the influence of the Ice Storm, while not necessarily apparent, I would say, like when I was thinking about films that tie in more closely to Sharp Corner, I would say a film like Taxi Driver is more of an obvious comp. But the Ice Storm has a special place in my heart, um, probably because it is emotional and is about people and families and interconnections, but isn't sentimental, which is quite a balancing act, I think, in the case of this movie. Um, but yeah, no, there's when I think about when I was writing Sharp Corner, what scripts did I look at? And The Ice Storm is certainly one of them. Um, yeah, and sure, there's an ice storm in both movies. But I can't really say that they're films of the same ilk by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, no, no, no. Tonally, they're very different, and the stories are completely different. But I guess the thing I keep coming back to, in addition to the alienation and the isolation of their specific homes and how nobody's really close to anybody else that they need to be, either physically or emotionally, is the way that sort of Josh, the Ben Foster character, is deeply invested in a certain carriage, a certain the way he carries himself and the way people see him. He wants to be a husband and father with a good job, and a wife at home who loves him, and a kid who runs to his arms and all of that. And it feels like Josh would watch the ice storm and come away with a list of things the characters didn't do properly.
Well, I think, yeah, definitely he, perhaps like Jamie Sheridan's character, is doing all the things he was taught or grew up to believe would be the right things in order to live a happy life. When we were making Sharp Corner, me and Ben talked about the Talking Heads a lot, and in particular the song "Once in a Lifetime."
Mm-hmm.
Um, how did I end up here, essentially. And so, yeah, alienation and also trying to tell a story about the interconnectedness between families and the impact that our narcissism and our selfishness can have um, on the people most close to us. And those are themes that I think are, that both my film and the Ice Storm have in common, for sure. Um, and the desire to, or the interest in deadpan comedy, I would say I'm purposely trying to tell a more darkly comedic story and not a straight up drama um, with sharp corner. But there's a certain sort of deadpan humor that I certainly identify or relate to, the same humor that shows up in the Ice Storm.
Your ending is, shall we say, ambivalent in a very different way.
Certainly is, yeah.
My thanks to Jason Buxton, whose new thriller Sharp Corner is in theaters in the US and Canada this Friday, May 9th. Thanks also to Sarah Sparks. She knows what she did. You can find Jason on Instagram at BuxtonFilm, all one word, BuxtonFilm, and you can find The Ice Storm on Blu-ray and DVD in the Criterion Collection in an excellent special edition, and it's also available to rent or buy on various VOD services across North America. You can find me on Blue Sky at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 41 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it, or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps. It truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe. Watch movies. Wear a mask if you go out. Get the new booster as soon as you can. I'll see you next week.